John Miller stood at his window, looking out at the red landscape of Mars Colony. His weathered hands gripped a cup of coffee as the news played on the screen behind him. The reporter's voice was tight with fear. "We have confirmed reports that Titan Outpost has been sterilized by Concordat forces. All 20,000 colonists are presumed dead. The Valatrix High Command cites resource quota violations as justification for this action." John closed his eyes. Another human settlement. Gone. Another 20,000 lives snuffed out because they dared to mine more ore than their alien overlords allowed. He had seen too much death in his 60 years. 30 of those years had been spent in Earth's Navy before the Concordat arrived and forced humanity to dismantle its military. The door chimed. John set down his coffee and pressed the entry button. His old friend Frank Russell stepped inside, his face grim. "You saw the news?" Frank asked. John nodded. "Titan makes 4 colonies this year alone." Frank glanced around nervously before lowering his voice. "We need to talk somewhere secure." 10 minutes later, they stood in John's garden dome. The plants provided cover from any listening devices. Frank had always been paranoid, but living under Concordat rule had made his caution necessary. "It's happening," Frank said. "Project Armageddon is moving to final phase." John stared at his friend. "That's impossible. The Concordat monitors everything we build." Frank smiled for the first time. "Not everything. We've had 20 years to prepare. The shipyards are ready. The fleet exists, John." "How many ships are we talking about?" John asked, his mind racing. 700,000. John nearly choked. "That's insane. There's no way we could hide that many vessels." "Phantom drive technology," Frank said. "Dr. Peterson finally perfected it 10 years ago. The ships are invisible to Concordat sensors. We've been building them in plain sight, inside what the aliens think are mining operations." John shook his head in disbelief. "Even if this is true, we'd need crews, weapons, training. All handled. Every colony has secret training facilities. 1 in every 100 humans knows about this, John. We've been preparing while pretending to be the good little primitives the Valatrix think we are." The screen in John's living room suddenly switched to an emergency broadcast. Ambassador Lisa Ward appeared, her face bruised. Behind her stood 3 tall Valatrix officials, their gray skin and multiple eyes giving them an appearance of cold calculation. "People of Earth and the colonies," Lisa said, her voice steady despite her obvious injuries. "I have been instructed to inform you that the Galactic Concordat has found humanity's population levels to be unsustainable for our resource allocation. A 40% reduction in human numbers has been ordered, to be carried out within the next solar year." One of the Valatrix leaned forward. "The process will be painless. Selected humans will be processed for biological materials. This is an honor. Your molecules will serve higher civilizations." The broadcast cut off. John stood frozen in horror. Frank grabbed his arm. "Now do you understand? This was always their plan. We're cattle to them." John's military training kicked in. "Who's commanding the fleet?" "Admiral Paul Wright. Karen Bell gave the final authorization yesterday before the Titan attack. They didn't know about this new culling order, but they knew something was coming." John's communication device buzzed. A message appeared. "Lazarus Protocol activated. Report to nearest assembly point." The text vanished after 5 seconds. "That's my call too," Frank said, showing his own device. "You're being reactivated, Captain Miller." "It's been 15 years since I commanded anything," John said. "We need every experienced officer. The Retribution needs a captain." John's eyebrows shot up. "The flagship? There must be better options." "You were the best tactical commander in the fleet. Admiral Wright requested you specifically." Across Mars Colony, thousands of people were receiving similar messages. Some quietly left their homes and jobs. Others made excuses about family emergencies. Within hours, the colony's population would decrease by 15%, but the Concordat monitors would detect nothing unusual. On Earth, President Karen Bell sat in a secure bunker 1 mile beneath Denver. Around her, the civilian leadership of humanity watched screens showing hundreds of hidden facilities across the solar system opening to reveal the truth. Massive ships rose from beneath the surface of the moon. Asteroid bases split open, releasing swarms of fighters. Gas mining platforms in Jupiter's atmosphere transformed into carriers. The greatest deception in human history was unveiling itself. "Madam President," a young officer said, "we're receiving the first visual confirmation of the Phantom Fleet." The screens showed the space around Saturn. At first, there was nothing but the ringed planet against the blackness. Then, as if emerging from thin air, ships appeared. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Cruisers, destroyers, dreadnoughts, an armada beyond imagination. "Dr. Peterson's Phantom Drive is working perfectly," said Eric Daniels, the fleet's chief strategist. "The Concordat still doesn't see them." Karen Bell stood up. The weight of 20 years of planning, of secret meetings and hidden resources, of lying to both her own people and their oppressors, showed in the lines of her face. "Send the final activation code," she said. "All ships, all systems." In a hidden facility in the Martian hills, Samantha Gray watched as her designs came to life. The engineer had spent her career building ships that could outfight anything the Concordat had. Now her creations were emerging from hiding. The newest weapon, systems, the advanced shield technology, the engines that could outrun any Valatrix pursuit vessel, all were finally being revealed. "The Concordat thinks our technology is centuries behind theirs," she told her team. "They're about to learn how wrong they are." In orbit around Mars, John Miller boarded a small shuttle. It rose quickly through the thin atmosphere and headed toward a patch of seemingly empty space. Then the air shimmered, and the Retribution appeared. The massive ship stretched nearly 3 miles from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that no human vessel was supposed to possess. As John stepped onto the bridge, officers snapped to attention. "Captain on deck," someone called out. John looked at the crew, men and women who had trained in secret for years while pretending to be miners, farmers, and technicians in their public lives. "Status report," he said, settling into the command chair. "All systems ready, sir," replied his executive officer. "The fleet is assembling. We launch in 6 hours." John nodded. "Communications blackout across all human territory?" "Yes, sir. The Concordat thinks it's a solar flare disrupting signals." John looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of thousands of human ships taking position. After decades of hiding and planning, the greatest armada ever created was about to reveal itself to an unsuspecting galaxy. The wait was almost over. Soon the Concordat would learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Soon, 700,000 human warships would launch, and the galaxy would fall silent in horror. The hidden shipyards across the solar system hummed with activity. What had once been disguised as mining operations and waste disposal facilities now revealed their true purpose. In the asteroid belt alone, 50 massive construction bays opened, like flowers, each one releasing dozens of warships. Eric Daniels stood in the command center beneath Ceres, watching as the fleet gathered. The military strategist had spent the last 2 decades planning for this moment. Once he had been a chess champion. Now he played a much larger game, with the survival of humanity as the prize. "Status report," he said to the officers around him. 97% of vessels are now active and reporting ready," a young lieutenant replied. "The remaining 3% will be online within the hour." Eric nodded. The plan was unfolding exactly as he had designed it. The Concordat believed humans to be simple, predictable creatures. He had used that assumption against them, building the largest military force in the history of the galaxy, while the aliens looked down their noses at the barely sentient primitives. A screen lit up showing President Karen Bell. She looked tired but determined. "Mr. Daniels, I need your final assessment," she said. "Madam President, Project Armageddon is green across all metrics. The fleet is ready. The crews are in position. The Phantom drives are functioning at optimal levels." Karen closed her eyes briefly. 20 years of preparation, 20 years of pretending to be weak and compliant. "It was necessary," Eric said. "If the Concordat had any idea of our true capabilities, they would have sterilized Earth long ago." And now we're about to show them everything at once, Karen said. The risk is enormous. The risk of doing nothing is greater. You've seen the culling order. If we don't act now, 4 billion humans will die. Karen nodded slowly. I'm authorizing Protocol Lazarus. Full deployment. The transmission ended. Eric turned to his staff. Send the go codes to all fleet commanders. Operation timing remains as planned. In a lab deep beneath Europa's ice, Dr. George Peterson watched as technicians prepared the final Phantom drive units. His invention had made everything possible. The drives bent light and energy around the ships, making them invisible to sensors. Even more importantly, they masked the enormous power signatures of the fleet's advanced weapon systems. Will they hold up in combat? Asked a nervous engineer. George patted the nearest drive. They'll do what they need to do. Once the shooting starts, stealth won't matter anyway. By then it'll be too late for the Concordat to do anything but surrender or die. On board the Retribution, Captain John Miller walked the length of the massive vessel, inspecting every department. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the coming battle. Many of them had never seen real combat, having trained only in simulators. But their eyes showed determination. Captain, Admiral Wright is requesting to speak with you, his executive officer said. John made his way to the communication room. The screen showed Paul Wright, the man who would lead humanity's forces into battle. John, good to see you, Paul said. How's the Retribution? Ready, sir. The crew is young but capable. Paul nodded. We're all going to be tested soon. The Retribution will lead the attack on Valatrix Prime. I need your best work, John. You'll have it, sir. May I ask about the battle plan? 500,000 ships will hit Concordat military installations simultaneously across 300 star systems. The remaining 200,000 will target their seat of government and their main fleet bases. We expect to achieve complete tactical surprise. John whistled softly. And after? Paul's face hardened. We offer terms. Fair ones, but firm. The subjugation of humanity ends today. After the call ended, John checked the time. Less than 2 hours until the fleet launched. He made his way to the ship's mess hall, where off-duty crew members ate their meals. Conversation stopped as he entered. These people had lived double lives for years, pretending to be ordinary citizens while secretly training for war. Carry on, John said, getting himself a cup of coffee. A young officer approached him. Sir, is it true that we'll be hitting the Valatrix homeworld directly? John studied her face. That's correct, Lieutenant. Chen, sir. Lisa Chen. Weapons, systems. Lieutenant Chen, what we're about to do hasn't been attempted in the history of the galaxy. We're going to hit thousands of targets simultaneously. The coordination has to be perfect. And if it isn't, sir? John looked around at the faces watching him. If it isn't, humanity as we know it will cease to exist. The Concordat won't show mercy if we fail. Throughout the solar system, similar conversations were happening on thousands of ships. Men and women who had hidden their true purpose were now embracing it openly. The deception was over. The time for action had come. In her private quarters, Samantha Gray reviewed the final weapons tests. The engineer had designed systems that would shock even the most advanced Concordat scientists. Weapons that shouldn't have been possible with humanity's supposed level of technology. Her screen beeped with an incoming message. It was from Frank Russell. Is it really going to work? He asked without preamble. Samantha smiled. The ships will work, Frank. The question is, will the plan? It has to, Frank replied. There's no going back now. Across human space, all normal communications went silent. The Concordat monitors noted the outage but attributed it to solar activity. They had no way of knowing that the silence masked the final preparations of the largest military operation ever conceived. On Earth, in cities and towns across the planet, civilians went about their business, unaware of what was about to happen. Only those directly involved in Project Armageddon knew that by tomorrow the galaxy would be forever changed. At the main Concordat observation post on Luna, a bored Valatrix officer noticed an unusual energy spike. Before he could investigate, Further, his systems went offline. The backup systems failed to activate. By the time he realized something was wrong, it was already too late. The countdown reached 0. In perfect synchronization, phantom drives across 700,000 ships powered down. The human fleet became visible, but they weren't in the solar system anymore. Each battle group had already jumped to its target location, using coordinates that had been carefully plotted and memorized. Across the galaxy, at concordate military bases and government centers, sensors suddenly detected massive human fleets appearing out of nowhere. On Valatrix Prime, the seat of the Galactic Concordate's government, 10,000 human warships materialized in orbit. The Retribution led the formation, its weapons powered and ready. Captain John Miller stood on the bridge, looking at the beautiful, blue-green planet below. The homeworld of the species that had tormented humanity for decades was now at his mercy. "Open a channel to the Valatrix High Command," he ordered. It's time they learned who they've been dealing with. 700,000 human warships appeared simultaneously across concordate space. The galaxy, which moments before had been going about its normal business, froze in shock. On 100 worlds, beings of all species stopped and stared at the sky or at view screens showing the impossible sight of massive human fleets where none should exist. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain John Miller watched as the Valatrix homeworld filled the main screen. The beautiful planet with its swirling purple clouds and 3 moons had never been seen by human eyes in person before. Only in educational materials provided by the Concordate did humans know what their oppressor's homeworld looked like. "No response to our hail yet, Captain," said the communications officer. "They're in shock," John replied. "Keep broadcasting on all frequencies." The tactical display showed the positions of all human ships. 10,000 surrounded Valatrix Prime. The rest were spread across 300 star systems, targeting military bases, shipyards, and government installations. Every important concordate location was now under human guns. 20 years of intelligence gathering had given them perfect targeting data. "Sir, we're getting a signal from Admiral Wright," the communications officer said. Paul Wright's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral was aboard his flagship near the Concordate's largest military base in the Orion Arm. "John, all fleet elements. Report successful deployment. We have achieved complete tactical surprise. The time has come for humanity to speak with one voice." John nodded. "Understood, sir." The Admiral's image was replaced by a broadcast feed. It showed Admiral Wright standing tall in his dress uniform. This image was being transmitted to every communication device in Concordate space. "Attention, species of the Galactic Concordate. I am Admiral Paul Wright of the United Human Defense Fleet. For decades, your governing body has subjugated humanity. You have destroyed our colonies, restricted our development, and most recently, ordered the culling of our population. Today that ends." The camera pulled back to show the massive human fleet behind him. "As you can see, we are not the primitives you believed us to be. 700,000 human warships now hold position at every major concordate world and installation. We have the capability to destroy your civilization as easily as you destroyed our Titan outpost. But that is not our intention." On Valatrix Prime, the High Command was in chaos. The 7 senior members of the Valatrix species who ruled the Concordate huddled in their emergency bunker, watching the human broadcast with their multiple eyes wide in disbelief. "Impossible," whispered First Commander Zarek. "Their technology is primitive. We monitor everything they build." "Evidently not," said Third Commander Valar, her voice shaking. "Look at those ships. The design is unlike anything we've seen." "How did they hide this?" Second Commander Krell punched at a communication panel. "Where are our defense fleets? Why aren't they responding?" A junior officer's voice came through, trembling. "Commander, all defense fleets report human warships, holding position directly above them. They are asking for surrender terms." On board the Retribution, John received new orders. His ship would lead a small group to disable the Valatrix defense grid without causing civilian casualties. Precision was key. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chen from the weapons station, "targeting solutions are ready. We can take out their orbital defenses with minimal collateral damage." John nodded. Proceed, Lieutenant. Remember, this is not about revenge. This is about freedom. The Retribution's advanced weapons fired. Streams of energy, more focused than anything the Concordat had ever developed, struck the orbital defense platforms. One by one they went dark, disabled but not destroyed. All across Concordat space, similar scenes played out. Human ships neutralized military targets with surgical precision. The message was clear. Humanity could have destroyed everything, but chose not to. On the industrial world of Nexus 3, a Concordat manufacturing hub, Captain Nancy Green directed her battle group with cool efficiency. Her flagship, the Defiance, led 50 ships in disabling the planet's shipyards and defense systems. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "we've neutralized all military targets. Civilian areas remain untouched." Nancy nodded. "Good. Any resistance?" "None, ma'am. They're standing down." Similar reports came in from around the galaxy. The Concordat forces, faced with overwhelming human firepower and precision, were surrendering without a fight. 20 years of believing humans to be weak had left them completely unprepared for the reality of a technologically advanced human armada. News of the human fleet spread across the galaxy at the speed of communication. Species that had never questioned Concordat rule watched in amazement. Some felt terror at this display of human military might. Others, those who had also suffered under Concordat oppression, felt something different. Hope. On Brel, homeworld of the insectoid Vrock species, crowds gathered in public spaces to watch the broadcasts. The Vrock had been subjugated by the Concordat even longer than humans. "Could this be our chance?" one Vrock asked another. "If the humans overthrow the Concordat?" The question hung in the air, unfinished, but understood by all. Admiral writes, message continued to broadcast throughout the galaxy. "We asked for peace. You chose subjugation. Now witness the consequences, but also witness our restraint. We could destroy your worlds as you destroyed ours. Instead, we offer terms. The subjugation of humanity ends today. The subjugation of all species under the Concordat ends today." On Valatrix Prime, the 7 members of the High Command finally reached a decision. With trembling hands, First Commander Zarek opened a channel to the Retribution. "This is First Commander Zarek of the Valatrix High Command. We are prepared to discuss terms." John Miller allowed himself a small smile. "First Commander, this is Captain John Miller of the UHF Retribution. Admiral Wright will be receiving your surrender personally. Until then, we will maintain our position. Any aggressive move will be met with immediate response." The communication ended. John looked around the bridge at his crew. Many had tears in their eyes. Generations of humans had lived under Concordat rule. For the first time, they were truly free. "Sir," said his executive officer quietly, "sensors are picking up something interesting. Other subjugated species. They're reaching out to us. They want to know if our offer of ending subjugation extends to them." John nodded. "Tell them it does. Today isn't just about human freedom. It's about breaking the chains for everyone." The image of 700,000 human warships spread across the galaxy, holding position over Concordat worlds, would become the most famous historical image in galactic history. For some, it was an image of terror. For others, liberation. For all, it marked the day everything changed. The galaxy had fallen silent in horror, but in that silence, the seeds of a new order were already beginning to grow. 1 week after the initial assault, the major Concordat powers had surrendered. Alan Pierce, the newly appointed human diplomat, stood in the grand hall of what had once been the Valatrix High Command headquarters. The ceiling soared 100 feet above, designed to impress visitors with the power and majesty of the Concordat. Now it served as the setting for a different kind of power shift. Around a massive circular table sat representatives from 30 different species. The 7 members of the Valatrix High Command occupied seats that were no longer raised above the others. For the first time in centuries, they were equals in a gathering. "The terms are simple," Alan said, his voice carrying through the hall. The Galactic Concordat will be dissolved. In its place, we propose the formation of the Terran Protectorate, a coalition of equal member species. First Commander Zarek's multiple eyes blinked rapidly in distress. Equal. This is absurd. Some species are naturally superior. That kind of thinking, Alan interrupted, is what brought us to this moment. Your belief in your superiority led you to underestimate humans. Look where that got you. The representatives from other formerly subjugated species nodded in agreement. The Vrock ambassador clicked her mandibles, and what humans had learned was an expression of satisfaction. The human fleet remains in position, Alan continued. But we have no desire for extended military occupation. Accept these terms, and we can begin a new chapter in galactic history, one based on mutual respect rather than dominance. After the meeting, Alan returned to the human embassy that had been hastily established in what was once a Valatrix government building. There he met with President Karen Bell, who had traveled to Valatrix Prime for the negotiations. How did it go? Karen asked. About as expected, Alan replied. The Valatrix are struggling with their new reality. The other species are cautiously optimistic. Karen nodded. And what about the reports from Sector 12? Alan's expression darkened. Confirmed. We found detention camps on 3 worlds. The Concordat was experimenting on members of various species, including humans. The evidence has been documented and will be presented tomorrow. Karen closed her eyes briefly. This justifies our actions even more, but it also makes our path forward more difficult. Many will call for revenge. On board the Retribution, now in stationary orbit above Valatrix Prime, Captain John Miller met with Dr. Susan Collins. Susan had been a professor of interspecies ethics before the Revolution. Now she served as a key advisor to the provisional government. The discovery of these camps changes things, John said, reviewing the images on his screen. The crew is angry. Hell, I'm angry. Susan nodded. Of course you are. What they did was monstrous. But John, if we respond with equal cruelty, we become what we fought against. So we just forgive and forget? No, Susan said firmly. We establish justice. We hold individuals accountable. But we don't condemn entire species for the actions of their leaders. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert. John activated his communication panel. Captain, this is Bridge. We're detecting unusual movement from the Valatrix diplomatic vessels. John and Susan hurried to the bridge. The tactical display showed 3 large Valatrix ships breaking formation from the diplomatic fleet. They're powering engines, Lieutenant Chen reported. Heading for the outer system. Hail them, John ordered. No response, sir. John frowned. Where's the high command? Supposed to be right now. At the diplomatic reception in the capital city, Susan answered. All 7 members. John turned to his communications officer. Contact security at the reception. Verify that all high command members are present. The answer came back quickly. Sir, security reports that all Valatrix officials at the reception are junior ministers. The high command is not there. They're running, John realized. Track those ships. Alert Admiral Wright. Across the galaxy, the restructuring of power continued. The human fleet maintained its positions, but its role was changing from conqueror to peacekeeper. On dozens of worlds, long subjugated species were establishing their own governments free from Concordat control. On Earth, crowds filled the streets of every major city. Screens displayed images from across the galaxy, human ships in formation around alien worlds, diplomatic meetings between species that had never been allowed direct contact before, the dismantling of Concordat monuments. Frank Russell watched the celebrations from his apartment window. A knock at his door revealed Samantha Gray, the engineer whose designs had made victory possible. Shouldn't you be at the parade? Frank asked. You're one of the heroes of the hour. Samantha shook her head. I'm not interested in parades. I'm interested in what comes next. She laid out a datapad showing schematics for new technologies. The Concordat was sitting on innovations they never shared, medical tech that could extend lifespan by centuries, clean energy systems that make our best efforts look primitive. Why would they keep these things to themselves? Frank asked. Control? Samantha replied simply. Knowledge is power. They kept subject species dependent and technologically inferior. Frank studied the designs. This changes everything. Again, Samantha added with a small smile. On Valatrix Prime, representatives from 50 species gathered in the Grand Plaza. Alan Pierce stood on a platform alongside leaders from various worlds. Behind them towered a newly constructed monument, AI, simple sphere representing unity, with each participating species' name engraved around its equator. Today, Alan announced to the gathered crowd and the billions watching via broadcast, we sign the new Galactic Charter, not as rulers and subjects but as equals. The Terran Protectorate will ensure the rights of all sentient beings, regardless of origin, biology, or history. One by one, representatives approached to add their signatures or species-specific marks of approval to the document. When the Vrock ambassador made her mark, a cheer rose from her people. They had been among the first to be subjugated by the Concordat and among the most harshly treated. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Wright approached John Miller, who stood at attention nearby. Captain, we have a situation, the Admiral said, quietly. Those Valatrix ships that escaped, they've vanished completely. Our best tracking systems can't find them. John frowned. That shouldn't be possible. And yet it happened, Wright replied. There's more. We've been analyzing Concordat technology. Some of it isn't their own development. It appears to have been given to them. By whom? Wright's expression was grim. That's the question, isn't it? And I have a feeling we're going to need an answer sooner rather than later. As the new Galactic Charter was formally adopted, the galaxy began its uncertain transition to a new era. Humanity had won its freedom and helped liberate others. But as John Miller looked up at the stars visible even in the daytime sky of Valatrix Prime, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end of the story. The High Command had escaped. Technology of unknown origin had been discovered, and somewhere out there, the architects of the old order might be watching, waiting, planning. 5 years had passed since humanity's uprising. John Miller stood on the balcony of his home on New Harmony, a planet that hosted representatives from 20 different species. As governor of this multi-species colony, he had overseen its growth, from a small outpost to a thriving center of galactic cooperation. The sky above was filled with ships coming and going. Trade vessels, diplomatic shuttles, and civilian transports moved in careful patterns. Among them, human warships still patrolled, though in smaller numbers than before. The Terran Protectorate maintained a strong defense force, but most of the massive fleet that had shocked the galaxy had been converted to peaceful purposes. Governor Miller, your next appointment has arrived, his assistant said through the communication system. John sighed and turned away from the view. Send them in. A group of 5 beings entered his office. 3 were human, 1 was Vrock, and 1 was Valatrix. The sight of the 3 species working together would have been unimaginable 6 years ago. Governor, thank you for seeing us, said Bill Cooper, the leader of the human delegation. We're concerned about the growing activities of the reclamation movement. John nodded. He had been tracking the problem for months. The reclamation was a group of former Concordat hardliners who refused to accept the new order. They conducted raids on isolated outposts and spread propaganda calling for a return to the old ways. What's happened now? John asked. They attacked a research station in the Proxima system, said Skik, the Vrock representative. Her mandibles clicked with agitation. 3 scientists were killed. And they're gaining support, added Millar, the Valatrix delegate. Unlike most of his species, Millar had embraced the new galactic structure. Many of my people feel they have lost their proper place in the order of things. John activated a display screen showing recent intelligence reports. Their activities have increased by 30% in the last 6 months. But that's not what worries me most. He pulled up images of reclamation ships. These vessels incorporate technology that wasn't in the Concordat's known arsenal. They're getting help from somewhere. Later that day, John attended a meeting with Dr. Susan Collins and Samantha Gray, now head of the Protectorate's Technology Division. They met in a secure room beneath the government complex. "What we've discovered is troubling," Samantha said without preamble. She activated a holographic display showing various technological artifacts. These devices were recovered from concordant vaults on 6 different worlds. They don't match concordant design principles, manufacturing techniques, or material composition. "Someone gave them advanced technology," Susan said. "But more importantly, we found references in their historical archives to beings they called the benefactors." John frowned. "They had patrons? Why wouldn't we have heard about them before?" "Because the Concordat deliberately hid the connection," Susan explained. "Their records suggest these benefactors provided the initial technology that allowed the Valatrix to dominate other species. But the relationship had conditions." "What kind of conditions?" John asked. "The Concordat was required to maintain specific population levels for all subject species," Susan said, "including humans." John's blood ran cold. "You mean the culling order may not have originated with the Concordat at all," Samantha finished. "They might have been following someone else's directive." The implications were staggering. If true, it meant the Concordat had been a puppet for some greater power, a power that remained hidden even now. In the Galactic Senate chamber on Valatrix, Prime, representatives from 200 species debated the future of the Protectorate. President Karen Bell, now in her 2nd term, listened as arguments flew back and forth. "The human military presence must be reduced further," insisted a senator from a former Concordat core world. 5 years of occupation is enough." "It's not occupation, it's protection," countered the Vrock ambassador. "Without the human fleet, what's to stop the reclamation from growing stronger?" Karen stepped to the podium when her turn came to speak. "The Protectorate was founded on principles of equality and cooperation. Humanity has reduced its military footprint by 60% since the Revolution. But recent events suggest that threats remain." She displayed images of the attacked research station. "The reclamation movement isn't just targeting humans. They're attacking any world or installation that embraces our new galactic community. We must stand united against this threat." The debate continued for hours. Some called for increased military action against the reclamation. Others advocated for negotiation. The division reflected a fundamental question that plagued the new order: how to balance security with freedom. As the Senate session ended for the day, Karen received an urgent message. She hurried to a secure communication room where Admiral Wright waited with a grim expression. "Madam President, our deep space monitoring stations have detected something," he said without greeting. "A signal from beyond the galaxy's edge." Karen's eyes widened. "Is it? We can't be certain yet," Wright said. "But yes, it appears to be directed toward our galaxy, and it bears similarities to fragments of communications we found in Concordat archives, communications they had with their benefactors. How long do we have?" "Based on the signal strength and direction, whatever sent it could reach us within 2 years, assuming they travel at speeds similar to our most advanced ships." Karen took a deep breath. "Inform Governor Miller and the Security Council. We need to prepare without causing a panic." Back on New Harmony, John stood once again on his balcony. Night had fallen, and the sky was full of stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the visible points of light, something was coming. The true architects of the Concordat, returning to a galaxy that had slipped from their control. His communication device chimed with a priority message from Earth. As he read it, his expression hardened. The time for celebration and rebuilding was over. Now they needed to prepare for a threat greater than the Concordat had ever been. In homes, on ships, and on hundreds of worlds, humans and their new allies went about their lives, unaware of what approached. They had won their freedom. They had created a new order based on equality rather than subjugation. Now they would have to defend it. John looked up at the stars one last time before going inside to begin preparations. The Concordat had been merely a puppet. Soon humanity would meet the puppet masters, but this time they wouldn't be facing them alone. This time they had allies, and they had 5 years of studying the technology left behind by the benefactors. The galaxy had fallen silent, in horror when humanity revealed its true strength. Soon, perhaps, it would be the benefactors' turn to be surprised.